Champions Cup quarter-final gave us 307 points scored, 41 tries, but most importantly, 4 semi-finalists. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. Okay, so we're going to go through each of the Champions Cup games, not in huge depth, but it's me, so it's not going to be short either. But we're going to go through each of them, and then after that, then we will do a bit of a summary of the Challenge Cup, which had its quarterfinal stages at the weekend as well. So we'll go through the games in the order that it happened, which means that we're starting with Bordeaux Begley 41, Harlequins 42. So Quins get a great start. I think it was Esterhazen, is put through a gap out on the left. He's got Porter running a nice line and support inside him, pops the ball back in. Porter goes over to score. Then Harlequins have an overlap out on the right wing, right beside the line. There's a handout, blocks it from a Bordeaux player. I think it was Garcia, right? Yeah, Garcia sticks his hand out and prevents the ball going to hand. Would have been a try, so he gets the yellow card and it's a penalty try, and Quins have a really good lead there. But then while Bordeaux are down to 14 men, then just at the end of the yellow card period, right, close line, Luku gets over in the corner, and then I think he missed the conversion on his own try, but still gets his team, going in the game. Then we have Burros goes over as well for Bordeaux, and they're really back in the game at this stage. But Quins just kept being able to edge that little bit ahead. Will Porter over again for them, and a half time, then because of Porter goes over. Then just before half time, Will Evans also gets over, and it was close coming up to the break, but Quins just kept pressing for that score before the break, and it made it 28-12 and gave Bordeaux a lot to do in the second half. Into that second half then, and Deporter, just the pickup by him, it was basically on his toes, and the guy's running at full tilt, manages to, it was an offload behind behind Smith, I think. Smith was kind of there blocking the line of like a natural pass, so lovely offload in behind him. Deporter coming on an angle and just full tilt, picks it off his toes and goes over to score. Just a brilliant score from him. And Bordeaux back in touch again, but again the Harlequins to go again. Like Dombrandt, I think it was Dombrandt who made a bust to set up. It was either, I think it was maybe Will Evans tries, one of the first, or one of the first half tries, but one of the last two, I think. And this time then he goes over from closer range here. Nice finish though from him, just showing the strength to get over. And again, Quins keeping the noses in front. Then Biari, I think it was like a kick through or something, and then he ends up getting the ball and he goes over. Either that was for his try, or he set up the next one for Tambwe as well. But we have 2 tries in 5 minutes from Bordeaux, and now they're suddenly got their noses in front. But Quins, they didn't panic. They managed to get themselves another score through Tyrone Green. Smith converts that one, and now they've got like a 6-point lead, right? It was 42-36 at this stage, going into the last few minutes. time way over for another try for Bordeaux, and I thought he did really well because he went in behind the posts and then he made sure that he came in a little bit further to make it an easier kick. And Luku, who nailed some really difficult kicks, from the touchline and stuff throughout the game. Then he misses probably certainly one of the easier kicks at goal. Maybe not as easiest one of the day, but the guys in the commentary seem to have been kind of just assuming he was going to get it. He misses that, and then Bordeaux just can't, get themselves another score. They lose by a point. A little bit heartbreaking from them. Quins would be delighted now. They won their first. Last week won, I think, their first knockout game, I think, in the Champions Cup, and now suddenly they find themselves in the semi-final, and they must be feeling like they're in dreamland at the moment. These were two teams coming into this quarterfinal who'd never, really gotten this far in the competition before, so one of them was going to break new ground anyway. But Bordeaux, they were a big surprise package in the pool stages. They had, a very emphatic win as well in their round of 16, but then, this seemed to just be a step too far for them, and, maybe like nosebleed territory almost, for them. But, you can't, whatever about scoring 41 points, you can't concede 42 points, and realistically hope to win the game. Obviously, they almost won it, but got to be a bit better on defense. Same though for Quins going into their semi-final as well. They're playing Toulouse in their semi-final. Their defense has got to be better, because Toulouse is the kind of team that look at that and think, oh, you're going to score 42 points. That's nice. Well, we're going to score like 50 odd or 60 odd points, and it won't matter to us. So, got to maybe, improve their defense a little bit. Don't compromise on their attack, because their attack is really what got Quins, going in this one, and kept them kind of a little bit ahead most of the time, and let them get that try to get themselves back ahead right at the end as well. So I said before on the build up in this one, Quins had a puncher's chance, and they really did finally deliver that knockout blow to Bordeaux. But geez, they were trading blows all the way through the game as well. It was a pretty exciting game, to watch. Well, when I say to watch, to kind of follow, because I was in work, so I was just following the what the update of the score was. So I wasn't actually watching; I was just looking at text updates. But pretty exciting there. Have to mention now, whoever does the highlights, and I know that, I mean the official highlights, right, for this competition, and the Challenge Cup was even worse. They're absolutely dire. They're terrible. Like, I don't know. Like, especially in the Challenge Cup, there were tons of tries missing. Like, and not just like, consolation tries. It didn't matter. Tries like the first try of the game, or a try that got a team back within a point, just completely missing from the highlights. And the same in these highlights as well, is that, the cut wasn't very good and stuff like that. So, and it's been a complaint for a while too. It's not just this season. It's been a lot of seasons with this, but, hopefully there's somebody out there who has the time, because that's the thing, right? Because if I had the time to be able to do it, I'm pretty sure that I could do a better highlights package of these games than the official one. But it's getting that time to be able to go through it and do it yourself. But somebody's getting paid to do it, and they're doing a terrible job. So pay me and I'll do it instead. Anyway, Harlequins win that one. So we go on to the next one then. Leinster 40, Stade La Rochelle 13. I'm still smiling about this one. It's, it just feels so good to have got that win. And, I honestly don't care about the semi-finals right now, because they're in May, and that seems like miles away. Obviously, it's going to come very quickly, but at the moment, I'm just happy to be happy, as it were. But this one was built, repeat of the last two finals. La Rochelle have beaten Leinster in the last 3 knockout games as well in the last 3 years. And, really, when you're talking Achilles heel, that's what they were really for Leinster. Leinster obviously won in La Rochelle in the pool stages. And that was a huge achievement. And to any English pundits complaining about Leinster having what they call a home semi-final by playing in Croke Park, which is obviously not their home because it's a Gaelic Games ground. But anybody complaining about that, that's why they got it. Going over there and winning in La Rochelle, it wasn't just handed to them on a plate. They had to go and win it. And the same with going and getting a bonus point in Leicester's backyard as well. They absolutely did it the hard way, and they deserve it. And if they're not good enough to do it next year and have to go away, then I'm not going to complain about that. So, I don't know why, especially, sorry, I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant. I don't understand the English media and English pundits complaining about stuff like this, because it was basically them and the English clubs that changed the format. Our old format used to be you had 20 teams, they went into 5 pools, the 5 pool winners went through, and the next 3 best runners up on the log went into the quarterfinals. We then had a quarterfinal draw, just a free draw, and then you went on from there into the semi-final draw, and then the final, and then that's how it was. And then the English clubs, the English media said that's not fair, we need to change it. We changed it to the way it is now, which is we have more teams, 24 teams in the pool stages. We've had already 2 different pool formats as well with those 24 teams. We've around a 16, and it was seeded because the English media and the English teams didn't think the way it was before was fair. And now because it's seeded, now apparently that's not fair either. So I don't, honestly, it's just griping, it's moaning, and I don't get it. For me, the way I look at it is, whatever the rules are, everybody knows the rules at the start of the competition. You play by those rules, and if those rules end up benefiting somebody by following the rules, that's not their fault, and you shouldn't take it as it being their fault that they're getting some advantage out of it. They're not. They're basically, they saw what the rules were and they planned accordingly, and their plan worked out, right? And that meant that Leinster, sent strong teams to La Rochelle, they sent strong teams to Leicester, and they're able to get the wins and get them those positions. So as far as I'm concerned, you can stick all your complaints about a semi-final at Croke Park where the sun don't shine, and and the other thing is, just because it's at Croke Park doesn't mean Leinster are guaranteed winners or whatever. For me, Leinster versus Northampton, you could play it almost anywhere in the world, and I think if they played 10 times, I think Leinster will probably win it 8 times, and Northampton twice. But at Croke Park, one of those 2 out of 10 chances could be Northampton, especially when we come to May. Form of the 2 teams could be completely different. Leinster could be on a down, Northampton on an up. They win, and then they get to play a final in England. And then is that fair, or is that okay because they're English? That's what I don't get, is the double standard. But anyway, rant over. So let's get back to just being happy for a while. So this game here, Leinster, start well, and they're putting pressure on. They win a penalty. Byrne pops it over. Then they're really putting a lot of pressure on that La Rochelle line. They got space out on the left. They finally decide to move it, and Ross Byrne gives a pass off to James Lowe. It was flat. at least, right? It was checked because it does look at certain camera angles like it might be forward, but it was definitely checked. Lowe goes over and he scores. And, Leinster in a little bit of control, piling on more pressure, another chance, and Byrne pops over another penalty. That was after Astoy scored a penalty for La Rochelle. Then they do the same trick again. They swap penalties again. And 3 minutes to go to halftime. James Gibson Park, he gets over for a try for Leinster. And again, this one, it was basically like, it was a wayward kick from La Rochelle. And Frawley and Lowe were there at the back. And I think it was Lowe said to Frawley, let's have a go. That's the way it looked to me anyway. And instead of kicking it back, they attacked up the line, exchanged passes, and Lowe goes through. Then just a lovely offload from him that initially looks like it's gone forward, but it's backwards out of the hands. Gives Gibson Park on the shoulder, goes forward from that, but that's fine. He gathers the ball and then he scampers over to score, and brilliant score from him. And you're thinking, well, as a Leinster fan, I'm thinking, okay, we got a bit of breathing room. Maybe we can do this, right? Then just before halftime, La Rochelle come up to Leinster's half, and they get themselves in position, and they get over for a try. And then who was it? It was Ben Venair, or I think that's his name. He was a loose head prop anyway. He goes over, and then Astoy converts it. And now it's like, oh no, we're like, it's 23-13 at half time. It's a 10-point game. La Rochelle came back at us the last few games, having had, a bigger lead than that. And yeah, everything's just going through your head, right? It's going to happen again, etc. But into the second half then, 2 minutes into half, Ryan Bird over for a score. Then Leinster just start pulling away. Dan Sheehan scores as well. James Lowe gets a second try with 20 minutes to go. And at that point then, the game was over, which is, it's nice. Obviously, as Leinster fans, it's nice. But it's nice as well because Leinster don't score then in the last 20 minutes. And that was part of the problem that they had in especially last year's final, was that they couldn't produce that score in the final quarter that would have maybe nudged them, either back in front or that little bit ahead that La Rochelle couldn't have overtaken them the way they did. So, and that's a lot with Leinster, is that they try and kind of end the game as a contest by that time. And then the last 20 minutes, they don't have as much experience as maybe other teams in having to then produce scores in the last quarter of the game. So in this one, they didn't have to either, but really good win for Leinster. La Rochelle, maybe not their best day. There is a full review of this game on the channel as well if you want to have a look at that. But some things I'll point out before we move on is Tyke Furlong was like a man possessed. He was hunting Will Skelton down, picking him up, everything, smashing him into tackle. And Leinster, all across the team, they brought that physicality and they made it so that La Rochelle couldn't do what they did before in terms of disrupting their ball. And also speed of ball was much faster. The passing was much crisper. The running lines just seemed like, to be that little bit better as well. Just every little thing was that little bit better than we've seen from Leinster this year. And he had all that up together, and it came to, easily the best performance of the year, and, a great result as well for them in the end. But listen, La Rochelle, they're a fantastic team. And sometimes it's not your day, and it wasn't their day on Saturday, but they're going to be back. This isn't the last we've seen of La Rochelle in this competition. Next few years, expect them still to be there as potential winners of this competition. Okay, on to our next one then is Northampton Saints 59, Vodacom Bulls 22. So even before this one started, the Bulls were getting a lot of flack over their selection. They obviously decided to prioritise the URC and send a second team to play Northampton. We've seen it happen before in pool matches and even in round of 16 games, but generally not in a quarter final. And again, a lot of kind of vitriol said about the Bulls, etc., especially in the English media again. But one thing you have to think about from the Bulls' point of view is, well, a couple of things. One, the travel arrangements are absolutely stupidly crazy for them. They're not allowed to arrange their own travel, and it's arranged by the by Saru instead. And because of that, their team, I don't think their team, all of them got together until maybe Thursday night or Friday or something like that. So that you can't prepare for a game like that anyway. And in fairness to them, they had to make a decision between do they potentially send their best team there, have them travel all the way there, then travel all the way back for a very important period in the URC where they're trying to, get that top billing, that top spot, seeding, and do they take that chance of send the top team there, maybe not even win the game? They then have to travel all the way there and all the way back with the crazy, a million stops or wherever it was, and everybody going different directions, the way it was planned, and then be disrupted for their preparations for the URC, and then have the players being tired and out of sorts as well for that, and basically lose on both fronts. So I can see why they did it. I think, in terms of the timings and stuff and the travel, certainly the travel for the Bulls needs to be better. And whether that's, Saru allowed the Bulls to make their own arrangements, which would be great, or the Bulls somehow can get like a travel partner that can, make sure that they don't have stupid crap like this for what could have been, the biggest game for them since they've joined the URC. Instead of being one where they send a second team who got a scoreline that sending a second team kind of deserves, if you ask me. But I can see why they did it. But also the other thing is that you have to remember the Bulls, this is on their second year in this competition, and they haven't built up that history, that rivalry, etc. They're going to do that over the next few years, and this competition is going to grow in popularity in South Africa, not just with the Bulls, but with all of the South African teams. It's going to grow in popularity, and the significance of getting to this stage, for a South African team will kind of sink in a little bit more, because, it's tough to get to quarterfinals of this competition, even tougher to get to semi-finals. And, once that starts happening, you're going to see priority, a little bit more priority, I think, for the Champions Cup then, and then we're going to see the best, I think, of the South African teams in this competition. So let's not be too harsh on them, is my take on this. But in fairness, this decision was rewarded the way it should have been, I think, in terms of the scoreline. But Saints start well. Ram gets over for a try for them. Then Hanacom responds for the Bulls. A few minutes later, though, Laws is over for Saints. Then Slight home as well. Mitchell sniping over for 1-2. And already you feel like, the game is kind of done. But then Akker van der Merwe, he loves scoring tries, and he gets over for one for them as well. And then we got Sebastian de Klerk. I think this was like a breakaway try, right? Pretty sure They were defending, and then he intercepts and goes the length of the field to score. But then just before halftime, Alex Coles gets over to make it 28-22 at the break. And you feel like, the Saints, they got that little bit of a lead, but in the second half, there's chances for them to pull away, and that's what they did in the second half. Ram over for a second, Dingwall gets over as well, Mitchell gets his second, and then Augustus just adds to the blowout in the end. And some of the Saints tries pretty well worked. Some of as well, though, some of the defense from the Bulls not that great. Saints seem to find it pretty easy to break through their line at times. And then once they were in behind, then Saints had the support there and were able to finish off their scores. But credit to the Saints. I've said it before with other teams that when you're playing against a second string team, you only beat what's in front of you. It's not their fault. Again, I don't think too much shade should be thrown against the Bulls either, but it is what it is, as I say. Saints 59, Bulls 22, and the Saints go on to the semi-final. Okay, so last semi-final then, another one-sided affair. Toulouse 64, Exeter Chiefs 26. So, and I saw some people, because of the flack that the Bulls are getting, posting about, well, how come the Chiefs aren't getting flack for sending a second team? Obviously they didn't. It was just tongue-in-cheek stuff. But, this one we have well-worked try for Entamac to get over first off. Then Exeter back with a try from Eden Roots. And, we got, I think it was, who was next then? It was Jack Willis. Jack Willis on a nice burst. He gets over to score. And, it's pretty close at half time because Exeter had, I think, a couple of penalties, or like 3 penalties from Henry Slade as well. So 17-16 at half time. And Chiefs are genuinely in with a shout. And they did that the same kind of last year as well, up to the semi-final, where they lost to La Rochelle. But they kind of hung in games all the time, and that was, you thought at halftime maybe they're going to be able to do the same again here. But then into the second half, Blair Kinghorn finishing off a decent move. Then Peter Aki, who I thought was excellent in the centres for Toulouse, he gets over for a try, having set up, I think he set up the Kinghorn one, or he certainly was well involved in that. Kinghorn over for a second try then. Anton Dupont, just remind us that he's just an amazing player. The pace he showed, to finish off his score, was excellent. We have Wimbat Bush getting over for pretty much a consolation try at this stage for Exeter. And then just more scores. Malia ends up with a double. Aki gets his second as well, as it turns into a bit of a blowout for Toulouse. Toulouse looking, in really hot form, and just the way Toulouse are able to bring the power, but also power with subtlety and just that bit of magic as well thrown in. And it was all just a bit too much for Exeter in the end, but Toulouse march on into the semi-finals. We're going to have a look at that semi-final draw now as well. So semi-final number 1, it's at Croke Park in Dublin, and it's Leinster versus Northampton Saints, and that's on Saturday 4th of May, and the kickoff is 5:30. So the second semi-final then is on the Sunday 5th of May, and it's 3 o'clock kickoff in the Stadium de Toulouse, which might kind of give you a hint of who might be the home side there, right? So Toulouse, the home side, obviously against Harlequins, but no griping about that apparently. That's totally fine that they're playing in their home stadium, rather than Leinster playing in a stadium that happens to be in their home city. So we leave that there. But 2 decent semi-final lineups. looking at both of them, obviously they're two obvious favourites. The home nation team, as it were, are anyone will tell you pretty much the favourites. But again, both of those away teams definitely have a chance to win. Like Saints, they do have the game to cause Leinster problems, and if they can do that for long enough, they can absolutely pull off a win. Harlequins, because of the way they attack and that kind of like gun ho, we're never beaten kind of attitude, means that they're gonna be in that game for maybe longer than people think. But again, you would think that both of the home teams maybe have that just little bit extra to be able to respond to anything and go away, but it doesn't always go that way, right? But those are our semi-final lineups. So we're going to look at the Challenge Cup now. So Challenge Cup, the first game was Friday night, Gloucester 23, Ospreys 13. Again, I have a review of this one on the channel. You want to go and check it out. The Ospreys did really well in the first half and then just kind of fell off it in the second half in this one. And, we had, first of all, penalty from Carreras, opens scoring for Gloucester. Then Giles finishing really well down the left for Ospreys try, converted by Owen Williams, and they're ahead. Then Carreras with a penalty about a few minutes after that, and then Gloucester got over for their try through Seb Blake, and I think Carreras knocked over another penalty just before half time, or not too long to go to, I think 5 minutes to half time or something, for Gloucester to lead 14-13. Then the second half, then Gloucester kind of really ground out the result, forcing penalties, and I'm pretty sure somebody in Ospreys opened their mouth for one of the penalties to be marched forward to the point where Carreras could kick for the posts. But Carreras adds on another 3 penalties to stretch that lead out from 1 point to 10, and then Ospreys just can't produce anything really, in the second half of note in terms of threatening that Gloucester line, getting them scores and giving themselves a chance. But fair play to Ospreys. It's been a long time since we've seen a Welsh team be competitive in any of the European competitions. So it was good to see them get this far, and hopefully this is just a building block for them that they move next year. They can go on from that. Gloucester, I thought, they responded really well, I think, to Ospreys going ahead, and then just kept their nerve really in that second half. Thought the game management was very good as well, and going into the semi-final, I think that's something that's going to really stand by them as well. On to then the next quarter-final, and it was Clermont Auvergne 53, Ulster 14. So obviously, as an Irishman, would have loved to seen Ulster win this one. Wasn't to be. Clermont obviously, looking at the scoreline, deserved victors. But Clermont are one of those teams that I really admire as well, because they especially Champions Cup, but even this competition as well, they especially in a period of time where other than Toulouse and a handful of other teams, or not even a handful, a couple of other teams, a lot of French teams weren't taking Champions Cup very seriously, especially once they got to the stage where it was unlikely for them to progress and they started sending over second teams, etc. Clermont always took it seriously, and they, instead of prioritizing the top 14, they said, no, we want to do well in European competition. They didn't ever quite get to the stage where they won themselves a Champions Cup, or Heineken Cup as it was called, but still they left a big impression, I think, on the competition, and because of that, I'm always glad when I see them doing well in European competition. So in this one, again, the highlights were absolutely terrible. So I don't even know what the Ulster's first try was. It was the opening try of the game, but I didn't get to see it, so I can't tell you anything about it. But other than it was scored. Then I think, Nick Timoney got that try, but then Vato goes over to respond for Clermont, and then Soakula, I think it was, that got over as well. And then we have Timoney gets a second try just before half time, right? And I think Clermont got a third. Did Clermont get, or was it penalties? I'm trying to remember. I think it was penalties. They got a couple of converted tries and a couple of penalties. So they were leading 20 points to 14. And then just after the break, I think they get another try. And after that, then they just start pulling away. Ulster falling away. We have Soakula going over again. Rob Simmons gets over Yato. And then I think it was Duran right to death. Just made it a real blowout. Touchline conversion missed, but still 53 points to 14. So Ulster, they got Richie Murphy in there, and it looks like a big rebuilding job for them. The whole thing as well, before McFarland left, and they, just at the time when they'd been pretty much knocked out of the Champions Cup and dropped down into this competition, and then you saw, I think it was players. It was I think pretty sure it was one of the players who was doing an interview and talking about hopefully going on to win this competition, and you're thinking, like, that's not what we want to hear after you've just been knocked out of the Champions Cup, and that was part of the alarm bells ringing that there was something really wrong in that squad. Since then, McFarland has left, Richie Murphy is in there, the CEO has left there as well. But again, it's a big rebuilding process for them. So, Ulster, decent performance around the 16, but this was a step too far for them. Clermont deservedly into the semi-finals. On to then the first of two quarterfinals that were all URC affairs, which is obviously, as a URC fan, is great to see. So Sharks 36, Edinburgh 30, and Sharks, who had such a terrible start to the season, bottom of the URC for whatever it was, 13 or 14 rounds, or I'm not sure exactly how many, but basically stuck to the bottom for ages, found a bit of form, and now that form is helping them in the Challenge Cup as well. And they did well in this one because they had to come back from being down at half time. I think it was Mapimpi makes a break, he puts Ammo over to score, then Venter is over as well, but Ben Healy is popping over penalties for Edinburgh. Then Pierre Schumann gets over from close range, and Healy pops over a penalty to edge Edinburgh in front 16-14 at the break. Into the second half then, and Bongi and Banambi gets over for another try for the Sharks. His one, I'm pretty sure, it was this try, right, where Sharks set up a maul and Edinburgh looked to be actually defending it pretty well, and then just the whole maul just like cracks like an egg, and then Mbanambi is the only one left there, and he just goes steaming through the middle over to score. It was, it's crazy to see just the way the physics work in mauls. Sometimes it is just a delight really to see, because it was just so unexpected. There's basically, like, wherever it is, 16 massive guys all pushing the hell out of each other, and seemingly not going anywhere, and then suddenly it just goes pop, and then Mbanambi through the middle over to score. It was just nice to see. Then Sharks in a fairly decent position at that stage, and we have some penalties tacked on after that as well. Masuku with a couple, with about like 15 and 10 minutes ago, I think he got those. Hamish Watson then gets a try for Edinburgh to give them a glimmer of a chance, but then Kerwin Bosch scores a late penalty to. At that stage, then I think it was 36-23. So the game was pretty much sealed. And then Edinburgh, through Dave Cherry, go over from close range to make the scoreline look like it was like it was a one-score game, but make it look like Edinburgh maybe could have gotten a score at the end to win it, but it wasn't like that. They got a score at the end with the clock in the red to make it a one-score game, if that makes any sense to you. But Edinburgh, they didn't, didn't embarrass themselves, which is an important thing here. They weren't quite good enough to get through, but still, fairly close to the Sharks in the end. So I think they can be proud of their performance, because we've seen them before, going deeper in competitions and not quite turning up. At this one, I think looking at the performance, at least you can say that decent effort was put in by them. Not that they never, not that there's games where you can say they didn't try. It's just that there are games maybe where mentally they're not there, but they seem pretty good there. But Sharks just a little bit too much for them. I talked about Sharks as well earlier on this season. All of the fundamentals seem to be there for them to be performing well, and they weren't like putting all together, but now it seems like they are doing that. So they're on to the semi-final. And then the other quarter-final, then again, all URC affair was Benetton Rugby 39, Connacht 24. So Connacht with that amazing comeback against Pau last week, but again, this one just a bit of a step too far for them. And again, this is another one where whoever is making these highlights, I can understand if there may be knockoff highlights that somebody kind of made on their own camcorder or something like that. But to be missing so many crucial tries and stuff is just criminal, I think. But Connacht, great start over from Dave Heffernan, but then Benetton, some really well worked tries, Lucchese and then Menoncello over for them. Then Rhino Smith gets one as well, and they're really taking control. Then Thomas Albanaz, I know one of his tries was pretty special. I think it was the first one. He gets over as well before half time. Paul Boyle does respond for Connacht. So it's 26-14 at the break. So you're thinking, okay, well, Connacht, maybe they have a chance given what happened the week before. And, in fairness, into the second half, they do, get a try through Bundyaki. That kind of brings them back a little bit there, but then Benetton are just kind of able to stretch away. Albanos with another score before Conor Oliver gets over for Connacht, but at that stage the game is pretty much done and dusted. Benetton deserved winners. Connacht, I think this year they've been very inconsistent in terms of their performances, and it feels like part of it is obviously they got a new coach, even though he's part of the old regime, but still, with a new coach there, you're obviously going to be changing stuff and tweaking things and stuff, and maybe it hasn't either quite bedded in yet, or maybe they need to tweak it a little bit more for next season to get that right. But also, with Connacht, there is that whole thing of maybe not having the depth of other teams, especially compared to some of the other Irish provinces. But Connacht, they're kind of similar to Harlequins, I'd say, well, at this level at least, in that they do have that kind of puncher's chance, because they throw caution to the wind, and they can score a half full of tries in a short time and get themselves back into a game. The problem is with Connacht especially is that they can concede a half full of tries in a very short time, and it happened in this game as well. And defense, I think, for them needs to be tighter without but getting that balance between that and then not compromising the way you attack as well can be very difficult, especially on turnover ball. But Benetton deservedly into the semi-final, and we will have a look at the semi-final lineup. So it's the Sharks versus Clermont in the first semi-final. That's at the Twickenham Stoop because it's at 12:30 as well, Saturday, 4th of May. But I was going to say it's at the Twickenham Stoop because the South African teams aren't allowed to have home semi-finals, which I think is crazy. It's stupid. I know why, because of the travel involved, etc. But why is it okay for the South African teams to have to travel up to Europe? Would be my question. Why is that bit okay? But it's not okay the opposite way around. That's what I don't get. So again, I think make the rules the same for everyone, right? If it's a seeded system and you win in the way that makes you the seeded team, then you should get to play in your home country. If it's just a straight draw, then have the straight draw, and wherever way it falls, that's the way it falls. If somebody has to go down to South Africa to play a game, somebody has to go down to South Africa to play a game. So what? That's as far as I see. When a South African team is involved, as far as I see it, either somebody has to travel to South Africa and then back, or somebody from South Africa has to travel to Europe and back. So I honestly don't get it. Why it would be done that way. But that's the way it's done. And nobody's. I don't hear any English media saying, oh, it's terrible, the Sharks now have to come up to Twickenham to play their semi-final, maybe because there's no English teams involved. But I feel this is weird because I'm not anywhere near like a bidder or like any kind of person. I just feel like I think I'm just too happy over Leinster winning. I feel like I want to have a go with someone, which is again weird for me. But I just to leave there, that I just don't think it's fair. That's all. The only semi-final then is Gloucester versus Benetton. This one is in Kingsholm. Again, won't mention the fact that Gloucester earned their home semi-final, and fair play to them as far as I'm concerned. But this one is also on Saturday, 4th of May, and it's a 3:00 kickoff. And again, I think similar to the Champions Cup, I would say that the home teams are the favourites, but the away teams definitely have a chance of causing an upset. Clermont, just the fact that in the past, again, they have, decided to prioritise or at least equally, give equal weighting to European games and top 14 games, means that there's a very good chance that they're going to send a decent team over to Twickenham for that. Sharks obviously not really having home advantage in it makes it closer as well, although there's plenty of South Africans in London, so I'm sure they're going to get a really decent expat crowd there for that. So you could see it being a close game there. But again, I'd probably give the edge to the Sharks, but it's probably going to be like a score or two between them. In the other one then, Gloucester at home against Benetton. Benetton, only really this season we're seeing them start to produce performances on the road, but they're still at that point where, in their development as a squad, they're still at that point where they can have pretty poor performances and not turn up away from home. We saw against Leinster when they were right up there at the top, and they actually had a chance potentially to go top of the URC. And since then, their form has kind of dropped off significantly compared to the way it was up to that point in the season. So I feel like Benetton are going to have to, discover a little bit more form and a more consistency to be able to go there and, feel like, they have a real chance. Always, if you're in a semi-final, there obviously is a chance there, but I feel like there's a difference between, the fact that you have a chance just because you're in the game, and the having that real belief, that you can produce a performance that is going to be good enough to win a semi-final. So we'll see if they can get there or not. But certainly I would have Gloucester as the favourites in that one, and maybe by a score or two, I feel. So that's a look at European quarterfinals, and look ahead a little bit to the semi-finals. European rugby now gets parked for about a month or so. Well, like, was it 3 weeks or something, until those semi-finals come around, and then we'll obviously be back onto that again. But this weekend coming up, URC back, so we're going to be covering lots of those games. I'm also going to be doing, probably tomorrow, I'll do a roundup as well of the Women's Six Nations games that happened the weekend. So look out for that too. But always, every weekend there's rugby on during the season. You're going to be seeing videos from me, whether it's previews, reviews, or roundups. We're going to be covering them, and I've also got ideas for a few other videos, but they take a lot longer to do. So maybe in the off season, when we don't have club rugby, at least, I might be doing some videos on some of the clubs, especially maybe some of the Irish provinces. So we'll see about that. Kind of a different format, but that's for future me to worry about, as it were. For now, though, it was a great weekend of rugby. I wish that I worked a job where I could actually watch it all, because I'm the kind of rugby fan that if there was the possibility to, let's say, get up in the morning and watch a rugby game, like live games, from early in the morning until late at night on a weekend, that's what I do. I'd spend my whole day doing it, and I enjoy every single minute of it. So I was very happy to be able to see the round of 16 games. I watched 7 of the Champions Cup games. I would have watched 8, but 2 of them were on at the same time. And then I watched the Challenge Cup game as well. This week, I only got to watch 2 games, but I enjoyed both of them. And for the semi-finals now, I know when the semi-finals are, and I'm hopefully going to be able to request to get those weekends off work as well. We'll have to see. But that's my plan, at least, is to be off for those and to be able to watch those games. But again, that's in the future, so I'll leave that there and just wish you guys a good evening.